right, we be live for CANNA World Expo, our compliance webcast today, our CBD compliance webcast, and it's going to be a fun, exciting day. So I'm going to, please bear with me. I'm also going to try and go live here with Facebook because you never know what you're going to get. And let's share, I'm going to share this into a page. This is always fun. And here we go. Oh, like I said, you never know what you're going to get on any of this stuff. So it's all very exciting to me. I know I've been doing some of these things in a completely different industry for a while, but there's could be glitches and just the weird little stuff that comes with electronics and, you know, doing some of these things as well. Hey, all right. Okay. So I'm going to dismiss this. Hey, and we've got Denise there live as well. And here we go. Interactive. Okay, settings. Woohoo, posts. Go live. Oh, add a title. Oops, that's the title. This is going to be the CBD Compliance Webcast. I even managed to spell that correctly today. How's that for a novel idea? All right. Share to groups and we'd be good to go. Well, maybe this will work. Maybe this won't. Oh, and now it just kicked me out. Cool. I love all of this stuff. And it's preparing my live, but it's still not sure. Let's try this again. One more time.
Every day's been a Monday since around March 15th. So, you know, the fact we're still kicking is enough at this point.
You know, thank you. I'm so glad I'm not the only one doing that. All right. And the thing is, I couldn't actually set this up while we were doing the, while we were in practice mode. So it's still thinking about this now. Gotta love that. Well, Denise, you want to give me a thumbs up and we'll just get going on here while Facebook decides whether it's going to do it or not?
Sure. That's great. If you can screen share, we'll get going.
We'll get going. Okay. I'm just going to go live. I'm just going to go for it. I hope you don't mind. And we'll just add a title later or something like this. Let me say something like, here, CBD Compliance Webcast. Go live. Here we go. Go live anyway. Okay, here we go. Do you want me to, I will try and moderate Facebook on the back end as well. And we'll see what happens as well. Let's see, I've got Facebook showing up here in just a moment. And
since we're streaming live, so whatever you did at work.
There you go. Is it happening? It's happening.
Yep.
Yay. Woohoo! Thank you so much for everybody for just being patient with this and all the fun stuff that we're doing here. So let me get started on it and begin some of the introductions. I'm Jessica Chandler, and I am with Trinity Global Enterprises, and you might be able to see my beautiful partner, Denise Mahaffey, as well. But what's really exciting is we have some incredible guests with us today. So without further ado, I'm actually going to get us started, and we are going to be dealing with, And look, I need to still even change my name here. How's that? I love all this. There we go. All right, so let me give a quick heads up. Our first speaker for today, let's head right on into it since we've kind of did a little tech stuff, is Frank Lane from CFN Media. Frank Lane is the president of CFN Media. And while Frank is not a banker, his background in cannabis financial media has provided the agencies, oh, you know what? Gosh, I would like to actually even do some screen sharing here in a moment. His background in cannabis financial media actually has provided his agency's clients with business resources that incorporate digital media marketing and an e-commerce strategy for business growth. Today, Frank is going to be speaking on the topics of raising capital using a compliant digital media strategy. And he's going to be speaking on digital platforms that work as an ecosystem, on-demand e-course highlights, how to prepare to raise capital successfully among accredited investors, e-commerce strategy for CBD brands, and solving the 4 key problems that limit growth. So in an industry where raising capital is more challenging than ever, while brands are seeing too much competition, lack of consumer education, and clear FDA guidance, especially for CBD companies, it is our pleasure to introduce you to Frank Lane, president of CFN Media.
Great. Jessica, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Do
Okay,
I need to
great.
go further ahead?
Yeah, a little bit. That's okay. That was a fantastic intro to Frank. And Frank, thank you. And Ashley, thank you. Snowden, thank you for being a part of this collaborative presentation. What we're talking about today, these are our 4 presenters today. Ashley Couch, who is an amazing attorney. She's got 13 years of entertainment and law experience. She is, we'll get into her background in detail when it comes to her presentation, but she is just literally amazing for the cannabis industry and knows law in every single state. I mean, that is incredible. Frank has been in the cannabis industry for as long as I can remember, because we've been in it about the same amount of time, and we've been in media for about the same amount of time. Frank Lane, no pun intended, is on the investor side and the financial side of the industry. So he's got a wealth of information to share. With publicly traded companies, there's compliance on an SEC level. And Frank will talk about that in addition to a new resource for privately held companies and publicly traded companies. So that's a huge bonus for us today. Snowden Bishop is a former news anchor. She's got an amazing track record in the media industry for 22 years. And in cannabis media, she's got 10 years experience and is the founder of the Cannabis Reporter radio show. This radio show is incredible. It broadcasts over 400 terrestrial radio stations. And because of that, there's FCC compliance that cannabis companies need to be aware of. There's certain things you can talk about, there's certain things you can't. So this presentation today is going to go through the rules of using media, because media is a very important part of the equation to growing a cannabis business. And I am Denise Mahaffey. I am the co-founder of Trinity Global Enterprises, LLC, which is a research and media company. We focus on public relations, and I will be able to explain to you during the presentation the difference between corporate communications, public relations, and earned media, which is the glue that holds it all together. So my lane is being able to leverage freedom of speech. And all of us combined have this industry knowledge that will allow cannabis companies the freedom to go out there and do what mainstream companies do, which is grow and talk about what you do. There's just certain things you can say and certain things you can't say. There's a time and a place for everything. So that's what this presentation is about today. Thanks, Jess. If you could forward to the next slide, that would be great.
Absolutely.
So in this industry today, where are we at? If you were able to join us in April, you heard the State of the Industry address. And where we're at right now is more of, it's transitioned from an initiative to a worldwide movement to restore cannabis. It is an emerging industry. It is not yet an established industry. And you can sense that by all of the legalities, which is Ashley's forte, and she'll be able to explain how on a world level, on a state level, on a regional level, how things are different at every single level. What we're working towards with CANNA World Expo and our worldwide team of industry professionals is transitioning to a world industry and really making this a world industry. Right now, well, before all of this distancing was taking place, the industries on the whole plant side were estimated by about 85 billion. CBD itself, just on the hemp side of things, is estimated at about 20 billion. And these are projections. So now things might have changed a little bit, but one thing is for sure. People want cannabis and they want access to cannabis. So what we do is we convey the truth so that people will know how to get it, what's legal and what's not. So Jess, if you could move to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So compliance is about driving policy reform, staying to the letter of the law, increasing access for consumers, and growing the industry. As we've come to determine, there are a few factors involved. One is purity. If you go to a website called plantstds.com, you will see that there is a whole level of agriculture and purity in agriculture that needs to take place to create an industry standard that will eliminate black market erosion, it will eliminate health risks, and it will implement COA, certificates of analysis, to prevent contamination. And contamination is a worldwide problem that has been highlighted in the news, country to country. So there's a lot of information out there, plantstds.com. And in April, when we hosted the CANNA World Expo Symposium, we had amazing healers from around the world that were explaining how cannabis impacts the immune system, and that every mammal, people and pets, and farm animals, every mammal has an endocannabinoid system. But challenge is, nobody in the cannabis industry can talk about it without being outside of legal compliance. So research and development is coming to the forefront to expand the data, to actually give empirical data that will prove what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is the literal proof. How do you convey the proof and the truth and stay compliant so you don't receive an FDA guidance letter, so you don't get shut down? These are all the things that we're going to talk about today on the webcast. If you can forward to the next slide, we're ready for that now. Thank you. Whoops, that one. There we go. So here's the hard truth. The hard truth is manufacturers, they can make products and sell products and do nothing more. They can't talk about them. They can't talk about what it does. There has been guidance that has stated you can't put CBD in ingestibles. You can't put CBD in beverages. If anybody's been in the cannabis industry for any amount of time, you'll realize that banking is quite difficult. So traditional banking is a growth inhibitor. Absolutely no health claims can be made whatsoever about cannabis, about what it does. So that's where the media comes into play, and freedom of speech. So freedom of speech through the media is an avenue that's open and accessible. So also some growth inhibitors on the federal level and state level and import-export on the international level. Those are questions on a legal level that our speaker later today, Ashley Couch, who is an amazing attorney, will be able to explain. So our guidance to all companies is, just if you could forward one more slide, thank you, is that we realize cannabis companies are feeling boxed in. Now, what we've done is today with our panel, we've looked at where are the growth inhibitors and how do we open that channel for businesses worldwide. So we're addressing things on a legal perspective, on a capital raising perspective for publicly traded companies with SEC compliance. We're opening access through editorial media, and that's on an FCC compliance level. And then we're going to show you how to leverage freedom of speech properly, compliantly, and that leads into community outreach, which is a passion of mine. So I'll be talking about that in just a little bit. So the bottom line is you fight fire with fire, and you use the media to help grow your company. However, next slide. There we go. So Jessica, if you could read Frank's intro one more time, that would be amazing.
I sure can do that. Absolutely. So with that, Frank Lane of CFN Media is the president. While he's not a banker, Frank's background in cannabis financial media has provided his agency's clients with business resources that incorporate digital marketing and an e-commerce strategy for business growth. Today, Frank is speaking on the topics of raising capital using a compliant digital media strategy, digital platforms that work as an ecosystem, on-demand e-course highlights, such as how to prepare to raise capital successfully among accredited investors, and e-commerce strategy for CBD brands, solving the 4 key problems that limit growth. In an industry where raising capital is more challenging than ever, while brands are seeing too much competition, lack of consumer education, and clear FDA guidance, especially for CBD companies, it is our pleasure to introduce you to Frank Lane, president of CFN Media. Take it away, Frank.
Thank you, Jessica. Can everyone see and hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you fine.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that introduction. And just a very brief background of CFN Media. We're a financial media platform and agency dedicated to the cannabis and CBD industries since 2013. And what we do is we help companies in the space through digital media programs attract investors and capital at scale. These companies retain us, and these digital programs will help these companies in their fundraising and their capital raising, whether they're a public or private company. We'll also help them if they're going public, an IPO, or if they're already public in terms of attracting stock investors. And of course, on the consumer side, we help CBD brands with their e-commerce strategy. That involves both affiliate marketing programs. Those are direct-to-consumer programs online, and also, and you'll see near the end of this presentation, an innovative new marketplace that we're launching. And so with that, next slide. One of the challenges that you see in the industry, in the cannabis and CBD industry, is because of the regulations, and on the cannabis side, it's not federally legal, and on the CBD side, the FDA hasn't given clear enough guidelines. Mainstream media and platforms like Google and Facebook and even traditional advertising agencies haven't fully come into the industry. And so, CFN kind of fills that void of not having, a CNBC or other kind of mainstream media platforms covering the space. So what we do is we actually provide sponsored content, digital marketing for these companies, and we allow them to tell their story, convey their message directly to investors, almost like you'd see on CNBC. We've invested in studios, so our programs involve interviewing in a studio, and of course now with COVID, we do that online. A CEO of a company, and that CEO can convey his company's message directly to an audience that we're broadcasting through our digital network. And so we'll attract investors to their company, whether they're public or private, help them raise capital, increase their awareness throughout the industry, not just in the US, but globally. And you can see that our new initiative is this CBD affiliate marketplace, which I'll be getting to. Next slide, please. So I want to start by looking at today's challenges, being a CBD or a cannabis company. On the funding side, it is more challenging now than ever to raise capital. And that's not just because of COVID-19. Even before that, last year, the cannabis and CBD markets were contracting in terms of available capital. And so now we have to use different methods in terms of attracting capital that we didn't rely on years ago when the market was really booming. And I'll go over those methods, and you'll see that it's really leveraging digital communications. And also on the brand side, if you're a CBD brand, you're seeing more and more competition, a lack of consumer education, which is preventing some consumers from using CBD, and a lack of clear FDA guidance. And I'll show you there's ways that you can really improve that all across the board. And so these are the two challenges we'll be highlighting. Next slide, please. So in addressing these challenges, here are the 4 topics I'm going to cover. Raising capital using a compliant digital media strategy. And really, again, that is leveraging, not just because we're in COVID, because today it's very difficult to congregate in person among investors. What we used to do a few years ago, go to a conference, where there were investors there, we'd pitch to them, we'd get their business card, we'd talk to them, and hopefully we'd move to a funding discussion. Well, that is not possible now with COVID, but even before that was becoming more difficult because those main funds were simply not funding. So we're going to show you a way to do it digitally that's compliant. I'll also show you digital platforms that you can use together in an ecosystem to make that a success. And then we have a free on-demand e-course that you can take, and you'll have the link to that. And this course will show you everything you need to prepare for and have in place to have a successful raise. And that's perfect for companies that have not raised significant capital yet. And then finally, we'll end with the e-commerce strategy. Those problems that I discussed, I'm going to show you how to solve 4 key problems that are limiting your growth in terms of CBD sales. So next slide, please. So let's start off with the first topic, and that is raising capital in today's environment digitally. And as I said before, even before COVID, it was becoming more difficult for companies to raise capital. Those funds that were doing it and dedicated to cannabis and CBD years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, they stopped really doing the kinds of raises. They were more interested and concerned about their own portfolio companies they've already invested in, to making sure they were solvent and survived the capital crunch. And so what is the solution? The solution is we now need to aggregate individual investors. And those individual investors are going to be online, because they're online looking at opportunities, reading about CBD and cannabis investments. They're not going to conferences now. And so to do that, we need digital technology. We need a way of conveying our company's message about the capital raise we're offering, and targeting that to individual investors and aggregating them digitally so that we can bring them in and gain their investment into the company. And you'll see that there are several compliant regulations that allow us to raise capital, from Regulation CF, which is crowdfunding. That's where retail investors can invest as little as $25. Reg A Plus is a regulation that allows you to actually go public through crowdfunding, and you can raise a lot of money and essentially go public. It's faster and cheaper than having an IPO. And then accredited investors, which the e-course gets into, there is a regulation called 506C, and that allows companies to generally solicit their offering online to target accredited investors. So let's go to the next slide. So in raising capital today, you need a digital strategy. You need to find a way to reach and aggregate individual investors online and bring them into your investment. Well, here are the platforms you want to use to accomplish that. First is digital marketing and outreach. And obviously that's what CFN does. And the key thing there is you need to digitize your pitch, because again, you're not giving it in person. And even if you could, you still want to reach people online, because that's really where you're going to be successful, is aggregating lots of individual investors. So you need a pitch video, and you need a way to broadcast that pitch video through a network that's going to reach investors, and then identify which investors are interested in moving to the next step. These are investors that have viewed your pitch video, are interested in funding your company, and want to talk to you. And of course, you need to find a company that understands SEC compliance, has the proper disclaimers and disclosures of all of your content and outreach so that it's compliant. So once investors are reached through digital marketing, where do they go? Well, there's now funding platforms. These are digital platforms that allow you to showcase your deal. Think of it as a digital portal where you upload the details of your offering, of your raise, like a pitch video, a deck, all of the due diligence agreements. And what these funding platforms allow is they're self-contained. So an investor can go in there, look at your deal, and actually review all the documents, sign all the documents, and even make an investment all on the platform. So it streamlines the whole process. You're not having to email documents, call investors. All of the interaction is done on the platform. And of course, you need the marketing campaign with your pitch video to drive investors to that deal page on the funding platform. And you'll see that there are available platforms now. One is Republic. This is for crowdfunding. And that means that crowdfunding is any investor can invest in the company, and as little as $25. And Republic is a mainstream funding platform, crowdfunding platform, where all kinds of companies in all kinds of industries, and they're now allowing cannabis. And we've seen that several cannabis companies have announced raises. And then there's accredited investor platforms. Now, accredited investors they meet a certain requirement in terms of income and assets, and they're able to invest in deals that retail investors can't at a higher level of investment. And those are what I'll be describing today. Most of the companies we work with are raising at least $2 million, and sometimes as much as $5, $10 million. And for them, they want to reach accredited investors. And I'll be getting into that. And then finally, the third piece is live events. Now, these live events are occurring all the time in CBD and cannabis. Many of them used to be physical, but now they've moved virtually. And essentially, these virtual conferences attract big investor communities that are there to look at companies. And companies on these live events, these virtual events, will pitch almost like they're in Shark Tank or sponsor the event. So investors that are attending can see these companies, and it's all part of the ecosystem. So if you can do a live event and pitch your company or at least sponsor, then investors will know about your offering. If you can use digital marketing to even drive them to that live event and then onto a funding platform, they'll be able to actually invest in your company. So that's how the digital strategy and ecosystem works. Next slide, please. So what we've done is, especially for companies, CBD and cannabis companies that have not raised significant capital before, we have put together a free e-course. And this e-course, you can see the link there and we'll send it to you. You can simply go there and enter your email and you will start receiving the e-course via email. Every third day you'll receive a new course module, and there's 7 of them. And this course module course will take you through everything you need to put into place in order to prepare to go out and raise capital. Next slide, please. Now, in the e-course, you're going to see everything, almost a checklist of the documents that you need in place. And the good thing about the course is it's not only going to explain and instruct what these are, but it's going to give you templates, actual templates, spreadsheets, Word documents that are going to actually help you build all of these. So it'll be very effective. And you can see the checklist there. You need a pitch deck, a pro forma, which is basically a financial forecast on the revenue that you're expecting to make and how investors will be paid back. Organizational docs, cap tables that shows who owns what, valuation, which we'll get into, which is very important. And then all of the documents that you need in place, from term sheets, subscription docs, and of course, business plans and summaries. Now, a lot of companies will hire attorneys or even advisors to help with all of this. But this course will show you how you can at least do it for yourself, or at least know what's involved. So if you do have a lawyer or a advisor, you'll know what you'll need to contribute. Next slide, please. So the next slide is just a word on the deck. Of course, the deck, the pitch deck is that presentation, usually in PowerPoint or PDF, that will take an investor through all of the key points of your raise. And you need this because this is really how you are communicating your raise. Even if you meet an investor in person, they're going to want to see your deck. They're going to want to see the details of your company, the revenue model, and how much you're raising and so forth. And of course, now that everything is digital, you will need this because you will actually either send it to or put it in your funding platform so that investors can view it. And you can see what goes into a pitch deck, the problem solution, the value prop, the revenue, competition, all those elements you need in the pitch deck. And this e-course will take you through that. We'll show you all of the templates to build all that out. Next slide, please. Now, a pro forma, that's usually a separate document that can be added to the pitch deck. And essentially what you're doing there is you're just showing investors how you expect to make revenue from the company, and how investors will actually be paid back. And so these are income statements, cash flow, and this is really how to build a pro forma. And you'll get a template, and it'll be very instruction based on how to build out a pro forma, which is usually in a spreadsheet format. Next slide, please. Now, if you've ever watched Shark Tank or shows like that, when people are asking for capital, one of the first things they have to know is what they're valuing their company at. You can't buy something or invest in it unless you know what it's worth. So one of the key aspects of raising capital is you've got to set your valuation. So the e-course will show that, how to look at comparables and transactions and other aspects that will help you build a solid valuation based on current climate and your business model. And that will help you really move quicker into raising capital. Next slide, please. Now, once you have everything together in terms of all the documents, the pro forma, you've got your pitch deck, and you have set your valuation, it's really time to start identifying who you're going to go out to. Obviously, friends and family is the first, because they know you and trust you. Angel investments, those are typically for startups. So if you are just starting up and you don't really have an operating company or revenue and you need the capital to get going, it will be angel investors. Venture are usually where you're a little further along as a company, where you may have a product or service that is already available. And then private equity, PE, that is when you're even more mature. And now it's time to actually give up large parts of equity for capital. And then there's the pubco route where you can go public and then access capital through the public markets, retail investors. And so you'll need to understand who you're going to go to get capital, and the e-course will take you through all of that. Next slide. Then the e-course will show you how to nail your investor pitch. And this is so important. Obviously, you'll give the pitch in person because we're not going to be in COVID forever. And you don't want to read the slides. You really want to internalize your pitch. But really, more importantly for now, even when COVID-19 is done, is you want to create a pitch video. One thing we've done is we've talked to the key investors in the space, and we asked them how they vetted deals to decide who they're going to invest in. And almost all of them said that they expected, and again, this was years ago, that they expected a company to have a pitch video. And they wanted that for two reasons. One, they'd rather view videos, quick videos, to determine if they're interested in a company as a first filter, rather than going through endless decks. It just takes a long time to go through and read decks. They'd much rather watch a short video and see the pitch from the company spokesperson or CEO. They can just go through it quicker, and then once they determine that first filter, then they'll look at the deck. And also, they've said that if a company doesn't have a pitch video, either on YouTube or on their site, that they feel like if they can't invest in a video, then they're probably not ready to raise capital. So pitch video is very important. It's what we do, and the e-course will show you how to do a proper pitch video. And of course, because we're in COVID-19 and everything's digital, that pitch video will be used in your digital campaign where you're targeting investors, and it will also be placed in your funding portal that is showcasing your deal. So investors can go in there and watch that pitch video and really get a sense of knowing who you are. And then on those platforms, if they actually want to talk to you, like a Zoom video, those platforms will provide one-on-one calling, video calling, so investors can chat directly with you. Next slide, please. Then the final part of the e-course is really bringing it all together. It's going to show you which digital platforms, funding platforms, you can showcase your capital raise on, and that would include your pitch video, your deck, all of your documents, which one's best for you, what the costs are related. Oftentimes, if you're in a funding platform for accredited investors, that funding platform is going to be a registered broker-dealer. They have to be. And the way that they get compensated is on the back end of your deal. So there's typically no front-end costs, which is great when you're raising capital. You don't have a lot of that. But what you simply do is you pay commissions on capital that's raised, so a percentage of it. And you would need to do that anyway if you're working with other broker-dealers. For crowdfunding campaigns, there may be some upfront costs associated with it, and then the back-end costs are nominal because you're simply getting retail investors that are investing, and you're paying them in equity. And then, of course, you have to pay for your marketing campaign. So that digital outreach is going to be essential, and that will oftentimes be paid in advance. Most digital platforms are not broker-dealers, and they have hard costs, so they want to be paid in advance rather than as a success fee. And only broker-dealers can take a success fee. And so most digital outreach programs like us are non-broker dealers. And so we have flat rates just like any agency, but we can take equity too. It's not tied to a success because we're not broker dealers, but it can really lessen the outright cash you'll need to pay for campaigns. Next slide, please. And you'll see that this is the link that you can go to. If you go to this link, you'll see a landing page with details of the e-course, and all you have to do is enter your email address, and you will be sent the e-course. And you can start taking it in the last 2 weeks, and at the end of 2 weeks, you really will be prepared to raise capital. You'll have all the guidance and tools to do so. Next slide, please. So I want to end, now that we've gone through how to raise capital in today's environment, the ecosystem that is really that needs to be in place, the platforms in order to do that, the e-course that will get you prepared to go into those platforms to start launching a digital media campaign so that you can start raising capital. I want to shift to the consumer side. And we actually help CBD brands with their e-commerce strategies. And we do that through direct-to-consumer digital marketing campaigns. And also we're close to launching a new innovative digital marketplace, a mall for CBD. So with that, I want to start by talking about what CBD brands are facing right now in terms of challenges. And that's too much competition. After the Farm Bill in 2018, many hemp-derived CBD companies came into the space, and they continue to do so. But at the same time, the number of CBD users has plateaued. And so with more competition, more CBD companies are fighting over the same finite consumer base. And the reason that the consumer base has kind of plateaued is really a lack of education and miscommunication. And that's all kind of prompted by the FDA's lack of clear guidelines. And so what you have is you have consumers that are confused. They know and they hear that CBD has benefits, but they're confused on what kind of CBD they should use. They are confused on where they can buy it, and really that's really what's setting up this problem. And the result is CBD brands are fighting over price. There's very little customer loyalty, and they're fighting over price, and that means that their revenues go down, and that's the real challenge. So I'm going to go over, these are kind of what's causing the problems. I'm going to go over the 4 solutions that we can put into place to solve these problems. And this is something that can happen now, even ahead of FDA guidance. So let's go to the next slide. So those were the cause of the problems. Let's talk about solving the key problems that are limiting commerce in CBD, that are actually limiting the amount of online sales that CBD brands can drive. And the first is you've got to reach and educate new consumers. I told you that the current consumer audience of CBD has plateaued. So the way to solve that is you have to reach consumers that aren't using CBD, have heard about it, like the benefits, but need to be educated. And to do that, you can use digital platforms like ours, digital marketing, that will reach consumers that may be interested in health products, in nutraceuticals. And then you can use video. Video is very powerful to educate. And once you reach these consumers online that are likely to be interested in CBD, you can then use a video, almost like an advertisement, a direct response video. And we see these all over YouTube. It's really the new way to market consumer-based products. There are videos that will hook you on interest and then show you a product that will help you. And then if you push a button after watching the video, you can go to their site and order it. And so with that, direct response videos are very powerful in CBD. You can have a firm actually record and produce a video on your product, and that video will be compliant in terms of not making claims. It's just really highlighting your product. It can include real user testimonials. These are people that have not been paid for their testimonial, but have used your product and were very positive about it. And so when potential consumers see these videos, they're going to be educated on your product, why CBD works, even down to the endocannabinoid system, and then see actual people that have used it. And so that's very powerful. And that's how you can scale to a new audience and bring in new consumers into your brand. The other problem is making sure if you've got a sustainable credit card or merchant processing. Obviously, if you don't have that, it's really difficult to sell your products online. And we're seeing very high rates and fees charged for credit card processing. Well, there is now technology available based on the blockchain that does processing using tokens. And so now you don't need to pay a credit card or a merchant processing. You can have this transaction done on a blockchain and simply pay for that transaction. So it's much cheaper than typical credit card merchant processing, and it cannot be taken away because it's compliant, it's token based. The next problem that needs to be solved is compliant advertising. With CBD, you need to make sure that the consumer is the right age based on their region. Some states now are allowing CBD in food and beverage. They're not waiting for the FDA. We've seen this with Virginia and Colorado. Colorado is now allowing CBD in food and beverage. So you need to find ways to make sure that when you're advertising, you're doing it correctly in terms of the right age of consumers, based on the region, based on what you're saying about your product. And now with technology, there is a way to do that really automatically in using blockchain technology. And then finally, consumer loyalty programs. I told you that one of the problems is brands are fighting over price, and there isn't enough customer loyalty. And one of the reasons is CBD brands have not figured out a way online to incentivize consumers to continue buying your product. And so with digital wallets, and this is available again on the blockchain, when a customer buys your product, they can download a digital wallet on their phone, and they can start accumulating points every time they buy your product and be incentivized. And then they can be reminded on their phone that they can buy another product or another offer. And they're close to getting a free product because they're close to accumulating enough points. And this is a very powerful way to get a customer to stay with you, to stay with your brand. And you can see that with technology, all of those problems can be solved really at once. And we are building a digital CBD marketplace, a digital mall based on a blockchain technology platform. And this will allow CBD brands to educate new consumers through video, to make sure that their payment processing is never taken away, to make sure and know that all of their advertising is compliant, and that they have customer loyalty programs digitally through digital wallets. And next slide, please. And all of this is not launched yet, but this is our marketplace. It's called cbdchangedmylife.com. If you go there now, it's really an informational site on CBD, why it works, videos on certain products. But very soon in the next month, that's going to transform into a full digital marketplace. And CBD brands will be able to, just like a physical mall, present their products and their company online. And those brands will be ensured that they're compliant, that they have digital video marketing, that they are reaching new consumers, and that they are retaining customers through applications like digital wallets. And so those are the things we need to think about in terms of marketing to consumers, how to do it right. And certainly when we launch this, we will let everybody know. And that is the end of my presentation.
Well, Frank, thank you so very much for all that information. I mean, wow, just even coming up with some of the stuff that's utilized in real estate, such as a pitch deck. Not everybody may know things like that. And thank you, Nancy, for being on Facebook Live and really appreciating that as well. So, Denise, I don't know if you want to chime in here, but I'm going to be moving on to our next incredible speaker, if you are ready for me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so let me give you a little bit of information here. Just so you know, the screen sometimes is a little bit slow about shifting things, so there is a tiny little bit of a delay. So if the slide doesn't change, speakers, as quickly as you'd like, just give it a moment, please. So I would like to present the incredible Ashley Couch as well. She is a cannabis law attorney with an extensive professional background in corporate law, entertainment law, and cannabis law. Some of the roles she has fulfilled include Vice President of Legal and Entertainment at Cincy Media, to Associate Counsel and Artist Rights Consultant at Live Nation Worldwide Incorporated. Today, Ashley is an active legal consultant for a variety of clients, including cannabis businesses. Her knowledge of legal compliance in all 50 states provides a pathway to developing strategies for growing cannabis businesses in today's turbulent business climate. CANNA World Expo is in deep appreciation for her time today as she updates us all on differing law between U.S. states, navigating significant legal acts and bills that shape the cannabis industry, and complexities of online business expansion. So, without further delay, we would like to introduce you to attorney Ashley Couch. Ashley, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you to CANNA World Expo and to Denise for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. We've discussed a little bit already with Denise and Frank speaking that the landscape for trying to navigate laws in cannabis and CBD are very difficult. We're dealing with often poorly written laws, incredibly vague laws, and laws that largely conflict. So even when there's not incredible ambiguity, we've got a lot of complications based on laws that we're really all subject to in this space, but that don't allow us to have clear pathways. Those laws are a result of federal legislation that I'll talk about a little bit. There are state rules. Sometimes there are city or county or smaller jurisdictional rules. And then there are kind of wild card laws, that is what I like to call them. So Frank has already mentioned the FDA rules. We'll talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. You'll hear more from others in relation to FCC and SEC guidelines, and also the FTC becomes involved as well. So from a federal perspective, hemp became legal in 2018. The Farm Bill was passed, which made it removed, in fact, CBD from the Controlled Substances Act, which is the governing federal legislation regarding drugs that was passed in 1970. So now if there's, I believe it's 0.3% THC or less, that's no longer considered a controlled substance under the act. However, even though it's become legal state by state, the rules are still very unclear. Until recently, it was not even legal in certain states, which is allowed. States can still decide to have more restrictive rules for certain things. And some of the strictest are in Iowa, Idaho, South Dakota, and Nebraska still. In addition to that, some states have chosen to still rely on federal guidelines for CBD, even though they're not for cannabis. California is an example of that, where they've cited a lot of federal law, related to CBD compliance, whereas they have a lot of state law in regards to cannabis. So it actually can make marketing CBD even more difficult sometimes, which is kind of wild. Let's see. So for CBD, the state laws, like I said, they really, really vary. And one of the big ones that is prevalent in many jurisdictions is that you cannot have CBD in food or beverage. And really, what it comes down to is how the CBD is made, meaning what type of plant what you're using, how it's going to be used in terms of how you're planning to use it as a treatment or as a topical, and you have to be very, very careful in that realm, and also how it's marketed. So, there are, and thank you for switching that screen. So the first one we're talking about right now or we just talked about the Farm Bill and then talking about some of the states. Beyond not being allowed to have food and beverage CBD, which is in a number of states. Some of them have really wonky laws. For example, in Vermont, there are specific laws about maple syrup. In Kentucky, you can't put CBD in tea. There are other places where you can't have it in meat or dairy. Some places you have to register with the state or have marketing approved in advance. Some have specific labeling. Some have to have a specific CBD to THC ratio. Some can be sold in cannabis stores only, whereas other states you could find the stuff at the mall. You could find it in grocery stores. And there are larger retailers that have been willing to take more of a gamble. Amazon is one that has been more friendly to the CBD industry, as well as now I believe Sephora is one of the larger retailers that's entering into this space in a meaningful way. But it makes it really tricky when you're marketing across state lines, because the federal problems are triggered once there is interstate commerce. So once you're selling something that's being made available over state lines. Obviously, when you're marketing things online, unless you have some mechanism for geofencing to limit the area in which your marketing is going to be distributed, there are really large concerns about making things available over state lines. So what's happened in this space largely is because of these regulations being unclear and because of online marketing, companies are starting to get hit with compliance issues, largely from federal regulatory agencies, and sometimes from state agencies, citing not only violation of state rules but also violation of federal rules that they've chosen to enforce. So, some ways around this. One example, as I mentioned, there are certain jurisdictions that require or offer an opportunity for you to submit your marketing in advance. That's a good way to at least try to comply and to build a relationship with those organizations. Typically, their opinions are not binding if you ask in advance. However, it does show that you tried to use good faith. There are also ways to, as we've been talking about, use First Amendment free speech, because when you're not doing something that's classified as advertising, there are not the same rules that apply. Endorsements are also opening up more. There are sports teams in golf and women's soccer that are now engaging in CBD partnerships in order to advertise more. And with influencers, I should mention as a sidebar, you do often trigger FTC guidelines as well. So that may be requiring a disclosure that this is a paid advertisement. The joys of Zoom from home. It could require a disclaimer that there's a paid advertisement, or it could require even more. So it's always advisable in that scenario to try to tell your influencer exactly what to say, make it very clear to ensure that they also are complying as you would be liable if they did not. And I'll try to keep the doggy quieter. So social platforms are obviously a seemingly appealing way to go. However, two of the biggest ones, Google and Facebook, as well as many others, will remove, ban, limit the content, even if it's educational content, and even if it is CBD related or hemp related, where it's really about things that are legal on a federal level anyway. And given now that Facebook alone has 2 billion users and 70% of Americans alone are on social media, this is a real concern when now online really, that's our town square. We don't have especially with COVID, we don't have those public meeting spaces where you would be able to promote free speech in traditional ways. So there are lawsuits happening in this space to try to force online companies to allow for more freedom of speech in this realm. There's actually a case that was handled in part by Normal, and it was a cancer survivor CBD user who was prevented from being able to distribute educational seminar content on Facebook. So that's one of the recent cases. And, the more we can do in the legislative space to fix this, that helps. So there are a lot of basic rules that really can apply to everywhere. One is age gating, having some way that you can at least try to keep it where your marketing is being targeted almost purely at adults, and that may be 18, it may be 21, depending on the jurisdiction. But that is one of the ways to help, because you need to be able to show that around 75%, usually it's about 72% in jurisdictions, that it's being marketed mainly to adults and not to children. So trying to not make it look appealing to children. There have been a number of CBD companies recently that have gotten in trouble for doing things that look like marketing to children online. So that's a big area of caution. And so for the FDA, let's talk about that for a little while. The FDA governs foods, drugs, cosmetics, and there are a couple of different areas of concern for CBD here. So one issue is that it's not considered in most scenarios a drug. There's actually only one approved cannabis drug that's being used for seizures with the FDA. So anything else being used as a therapeutic, medical, any kind of drug-ish treatment as a legal type of prescription almost drug, that would not be allowed under the FDA, because the FDA has not decided that CBD is considered a valid drug for almost all applications. So that means that you can't really make any health claims in any kind of advertisements. You can't talk about something supporting treatment or healing or remedy. The rules are incredibly difficult. Even saying that if something is great for a new tattoo has been deemed an inappropriate statement by the FDA. So some companies are getting letters saying that they are promoting drugs that have not been approved. Some get letters saying that they are promoting dietary supplements that have not been approved, because that's the same kind of ballgame with the FDA. Cosmetics and topicals have generally had a little bit more leeway. However, there are still rules about that, and a lot of companies are getting letters saying that they have quote unquote adulterated the cosmetics. So there's really no completely safe way with these current rules to be able to market. However, avoiding health claims, backing up what you're saying with science, targeting specific audiences that you know are appropriate, and abiding as much as you can of the laws within your jurisdiction will certainly help. Beyond that, some of the companies that have gotten these letters from the FDA that they have to prove that they're making steps to fix the problems and then respond back, then they're getting hit with class action lawsuits that are saying, well, now the FDA has said that you adulterated a food or a cosmetic product, or you're improperly marketing something as a supplement. Now class actions are popping up, which obviously become even more expensive, and the companies are having to prove that they are not really doing anything wrong, which is just very difficult in the current landscape. Which is why also these media tools being discussed on this webcast are incredibly valuable as we're trying to navigate this wild west of an industry. So again, avoiding comments like something is a relief or treatment or therapeutic, all of that stuff will help you stay as close to compliance as possible. Let's see. Also, this is kind of, I won't say a wild card, but something that a lot of companies don't think of, especially as they're growing. The Disability Act is also something triggered if you have 15 employees or more. And this is coming up more and more with CBD companies. Charlotte's Web is one of the examples that comes to mind that's actually been hit with a class action for violation of the American with Disabilities Act, because their websites are not compliant for the visually impaired. So kind of another layer of legal compliance in this space is trying to do your best to ensure that you've also made your online marketplace as accessible as possible and as required for law, and knowing that so many people with disabilities are also CBD and cannabis users, it's really in companies' best interest to be able to properly market and support those clients as well. So with all this going on, what are the solutions? One is to make great friends in media, like all of the incredible personalities that are on this webcast, that can help you navigate in a creative way outside of traditional marketing, since we can't just buy Facebook ads as easily as we would like to. advocating for legislative changes, because until we get the laws corrected and changed, we're going to be in the same boat. So the more that we can standardize, have laws that give back, that promote social equity within communities, that's really going to be a big fix of it too. And thank you for that slide change. If you can target your marketing to the areas that you know you're going to be doing business in, that can also help you avoid non-compliance issues in other areas. Again, online, that's very difficult. Always check with your local jurisdiction and rules. Obviously, I would suggest hiring proper counsel to ensure that you're navigating as best as possible and get written opinions to that effect when possible. And don't just assume that because others are doing it, it's okay. That's a question I get a lot of, well, so-and-so is doing it, how can they do it? Just because they haven't gotten caught doesn't mean that it's okay. And there will be more and more online enforcement as the world is going more and more online. That's already happening in the online legislative space. And so we need to be prepared for more stringent regulation of what's going on online as well. Age gates on websites, as I mentioned, are great. And, at least show that you're trying to hit the right people and that you're using your best efforts to comply. Always promote through education and testimonials when possible, and avoid promises of cures and things like that. But, having people that are passionate advocates for your products will help. And there are ways that you can describe how products are working for you without using words like cure or, will fix, or things that are avoidable language. Affiliate site ad placement can also sometimes help, where it's not pay-per-click, but per commission, selling at places like Amazon, as I mentioned, and then having alliances with others who can use First Amendment free speech in ways that will actually help promote your business and show all the wonderful things that you're doing. So I won't pretend that it's an easy space to navigate, but it does make it an exciting area where really our behavior will have a huge impact. The ethics and integrity with which we uphold the industry will have lasting impact. And it's very important that while we are trying to figure out how to comply ethically and how to do the right thing, that we really try to educate ourselves, work together as an industry, and make it a good look for each other. The more of us that are trying to do the right thing and make it credible, the better we're all going to do. So thank you again for this opportunity to speak on this, and best of luck to everybody who's out there trying to navigate this wild space.
Ashley. Thank you, Ashley. If you can stay on for Q&A,
absolutely,
we'd appreciate it. But we understand. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to try to share my screen and see if the audience will be able to.
There you go. Yes.
Oh, you did. You got it. That's great.
Yep.
Perfect.
You're okay. Great.
Great. And if you go up to the top and you go into under your bar, Denise, go to
yes.
Actual presentation. Otherwise, we just see everything, but we can see all the slides as well.
That's all right. Excellent. So, would you like me to introduce myself? Are you ready for me?
Oh, no.
Yes.
Do you want me to do the introduction? Denise?
Yes,
shall I?
please. Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Woohoo. Well, I would like to introduce our next incredible guest, Snowden Bishop. She is a talk radio host of the Cannabis Reporter, and has been, actually, it's a radio show whose, let's see, she has, oh my goodness, where to start with this? The Cannabis Reporter radio show actually is of Snowden. She has a 22-year career that began in the hectic arena of the broadcast news. She cut her teeth in FM radio before venturing into television as a news anchor for NBC affiliates in Missouri and Southern California. Behind the scenes, she has worked with major media companies like HBO, Warner, Castle Rock Entertainment, and EMI Capitol Records, just to name a few. And as an independent producer, her film, theater, and live televised events received critical acclaim. Her work as an environmental journalist has been published worldwide. Her interest in hemp as a carbon neutral resource inspired her to begin writing about cannabis in 2010. Now, Bernie's desire to educate mainstream audiences about the cannabis regulation prompted her return to broadcasting with the launch of the Cannabis the Cannabis Reporter radio show in 2015. As the first all cannabis talk program to achieve network syndication, the award-winning show airs on more than 400 terrestrial radio stations coast to coast and distributed via Newsbank to education institutions, research organizations, and libraries nationwide. Today, Snowden explains the art of navigating FCC compliance and legal ambiguities of covering a controlled substance on terrestrial radio, and how it helps companies to tap mainstream audiences that won't go out of their way to learn about cannabis online. So, Cannabis World Expo welcomes Snowden Bishop to the worldwide stage. Take it away, Snowden.
That was lovely. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. And Denise, thank you so much. And I've really learned a lot, actually, from you, Ashley. And I mean, this has been a great day so far. So to further, I'm not going to go where Ashley did because she really explained so much of what I could explain about what I do and why I'm on radio. But I think that it's important for people to understand is that as a media outlet, we are allowed to say things that the companies cannot say. So one of the advantages of, being an online forum like that is that we can actually publish content talking about people and their companies without them violating the rules about advertising their products, because as Ashley explained, it really is not permissible for you to talk about any of the curative effects or anything that hasn't been run by the FDA first in terms of promoting your products. But what we like to do, what we've done with our platform, we have our online content and we have the podcast online. We also have it on terrestrial radio. And there were a lot of advantages for going to terrestrial radio. The first and foremost being that we were able to go to an audience where we weren't just preaching to the choir. And the goal when we started this was really to educate audiences that were skeptical or that were just unaware and wouldn't think to go online to search for cannabis, or to also help to shape policy and get people excited about contacting their Congress people and senators to advocate for passing some regulation so that the industry could actually expand, thrive, and grow at a steady pace. And it has been growing. And we've been doing this for 5 years now, almost 5 years. And only 4 years actually on the radio, because it took me a long time to find a radio station that would actually play a cannabis show. And it's hard to believe that it was that different. The environment or the acceptance level of cannabis was that different about 4 years ago. But looking back on it, I remember calling a lot of radio stations. Finally, there was one in the area where I am, and they would sell me a slot. So initially I started out that way, paying to be on the radio. And it was a once a week show, and eventually it wound up getting picked up, and then we got a network to pick us up, and it just grew from there. Now we have satellite feeds, and in some of these smaller markets I come on right after Rush Limbaugh. And it's so there's a lot that I can talk about on the radio if it's me talking about it, but I cannot, under FCC guidelines, I cannot talk about, I can't ask people to go out and buy or use a substance that is federally still illegal. It's still in Schedule 1. So any cannabis, not hemp, because hemp obviously has been legalized, but THC cannabis is still a federally illegal substance. I can talk about it all day long, but I can't have someone come on the show and ask people to go out and buy that because it's a national show. And I think that that's probably one of the most important things that I have to remind people when they are on talking about it on our show or even giving us sponsored content. We offer online, which is a totally different animal, a pro series, which enables people to talk about their company, talk about their product in a way that's not giving any kind of curative effects, but they can talk about the advantages just in general of cannabis, and that there are people who have really benefited from it in a lot of ways, in a very vague way. But the real value in someone talking about their product or their brand is really just in the narrative and showing yourself to be an expert in the field, building trust with the audience. That is what is going to actually be more beneficial in the long run than trying to explain what your product will and won't do for someone, and then you can remain in compliance about it. So I think the main takeaway, and just to add on to what Ashley was saying, as long as your company is not the one making the claims, there are ways that, as connecting with media outlets, you can bring in people to offer quotes or be sources for an article talking about their experience, because they are not the company talking about it. And as long as they're not like a paid actor talking about it in such a way that it could be misleading, those things are legal. Not on the company website, as far as I understand it, and maybe I'll check with Ashley about that during the Q&A. But for the most part, people can have others talk about their product. So that's really kind of the nuts and bolts of it. But the advantages of radio just are really pretty great when it comes to raising awareness, positioning your company as an expert, or your principals as an expert, and having reach that's outside of the echo chambers where people are actually searching for cannabis online. They're advocates. They already get it. They're sold. But when it comes to reaching people and trying to just expand the base out so that there's a lot more acceptance, and people who were once skeptical can be more receptive to seeing laws change in their state, seeing their cities adopt some ordinances that allow them to, build new dispensaries or just make it more available to people. I mean, those are just all the real advantages to it. So I think with that is really the bottom line message that I just wanted to convey about this. So I think, Denise, are we going into a Q&A? I think someone might be muted. I don't know. Denise?
There we go. I've got her unmuted now.
Okay.
Oh,
thank
hey,
you.
that's great. I was
There you are. I was talking into a vacuum. You know, I think that actually Ashley covered so much, and I think that was really the bottom line of my message. So I wondered, is it time now to go into the Q&A?
Actually, it's not. I'm going to go into the difference of corporate communications, public relations, and earned media, if Jessica is able to jump back into the slide deck for just a moment.
I actually can. Isn't that amazing? Woohoo! Okay, I'm going to take over screen sharing.
Perfect.
There we go. How's that? Can you see it?
Yep, we can
Yes.
see it fine. We just need to get to corporate communications. And this will wrap up everything we talked about today. So our first presenter, Frank Lane, who had to go to a meeting, he talked about publicly traded companies and SEC compliance. And Ashley Couch was speaking about legal compliance overall, as well as FTC compliance. And Snowden Bishop is talking about radio and FCC compliance. So with all of this, and for CBD companies that have lasted through this presentation to this point, you're probably thinking, well, my gosh, what can we do besides make products and hope that somebody will find our company? So this is where the rubber meets the road. This is literally the magic of freedom of speech. And I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to Jessica so she could read the introduction, and then we'll go into the full presentation.
Absolutely. So to last, but definitely not least, we have our final presenter of the day, and I would like to introduce Denise Mahaffey. She is the co-founder of TGE Media and CANNA World EXPO. So Denise's professional background is in marketing, public relations, and media. Beginning in 2013, just as the documentary Weed was released, Denise's behind-the-scenes efforts created the pathway for hemp CBD in the worldwide news media. She composed hundreds of newswire press releases for publicly traded and privately held companies that resulted in more than 1,000 TV, radio, and print interviews. This legendary effort catalyzed unprecedented hemp law reform worldwide. As a public relations professional, Denise knows how to leverage freedom of speech with the news media while avoiding the gamut of potential legal compliance pitfalls. We are excited to introduce you to Denise Mahaffey, co-founder of TGE Media and CANNA World EXPO. Today, Denise explains the difference between corporate communications, public relations, and earned media for the cannabis industry. Denise, my sister, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Okay, so this is where the rubber meets the road. This is how to leverage freedom of speech and not get into hot water. And with knowing that I was basically at the beginning of creating the CBD industry and had the door slammed in my face countless times because I was talking about cannabis and it was taboo back then, there had to become a structure in the corporation where the information could flow properly and we could navigate through this gamut of potential pitfalls when it came to compliance. So I've seen it all, trust me. I've been in this since literally day one. So what I'd like to do is explain about corporate communications. Corporate communications is a role in a company that produces outbound messaging, outbound communications. So in my opinion, having pioneered the hemp CBD media industry, it's best to have a vetted third party, a PR agent, A PR agency drives the bus. And by the bus, I mean news production on behalf of a cannabis company. So you will typically not see a PR agent in the news interviews. You will, however, see the faces and the personalities of the company's corporate communications officer and executives in news interviews. And the reason for this is simple. It's freedom of speech. As you learned today, manufacturers can make no health claims, yet the media can, and the media does. The corporate voice can explain company advances. What are they doing? New products that have come out, you can show what they look like. Possibly some ingredients, but you might get yourself into hot water, so be careful on your labeling. Job creation, that's a great topic. Revenue growth, all of these things that companies normally do, that's what the corporate voice talks about. However, the role of public relations or PR, it works best in synergy with corporate communications, almost like an overlay. So PR will take the company's information and call on the news media to ask, is this something that you'd be interested in covering? And essentially, our role as PR agents and PR agencies is to give the news to the news. And in this way, we can explain the details that are completely off limits for cannabis companies that are making the products. And these types of topics include the real details, the nuts and bolts about industry advances, how it impacts people's lives, research data, and how that research data and these advances impact health and medicine worldwide. These are use cases of products and how it's benefited a certain person. These are all avenues that companies that make CBD products and cannabis products, they cannot even come close to approaching. So as you've come to find out, there are things that one can and cannot say in the media. For example, with the Cannabis Reporter's editorial interviews, a company representative cannot mention brands by name during that interview. And this news is governed by FCC compliance. And also, this news goes far and wide to 400 plus terrestrial radio stations coast to coast. Wouldn't you want that coverage? So in contrast, when you look at the FCC restrictions and everything, in contrast, television news is a little bit different. Television news is really image driven, and these are the types of interviews where you can show brands and you can show products at trade shows. You can talk to the people who have used these products and have had their lives changed by these particular products. Print publications can share images and editorial content. And there's literally a time and a place for every type of media coverage that should be incorporated into a company's corporate communications plan. And what I'd like to do is shift a little bit to social media, which is a double-edged sword. There's a level of censorship that's occurring that cannabis companies must be aware of. While some people think tagging C-IX in Roman numerals is a smart thing to do, we'd like you to think again, because those that have opened the door to a brand new wave of FDA guidance letters, and that leads to social media censorship. So if you think that eyes are not even on what you're tagging, think again. So the level of censorship has reached an all-time craziness high, and we've even experienced it at CANNA World Expo where our videos were editorial absolutely compliant, and we've been banned from YouTube. So these are things that are changing daily, and you have to go with the flow. You have to be ready for anything that's going to come at you. So be aware of the things that can take your company out of the game. Protect your hard work and protect your investment. So when you're conducting an interview and a health claim comes up, what do you do? And keep in mind, tastes great. is a health claim. The media interview that has a health claim in it cannot be used by corporate communications. However, a media interview that has a health claim in it can be shared on social media by a third party, just not the company. This is why aligning with a public relations agency is a two-step system, and it's a good system for cannabis companies to get ahead and to leverage freedom of speech. So essentially, earned media is the glue that binds corporate communications and public relations. So what is earned media? Earned media is not paid advertising. Earned media is a public relations agency that calls news producers and asks if they're interested in particular story concepts. And when they are, then booking interviews takes place. And providing the content for news interviews and editorial content, that's really what public relations does. And that's what we call earned media. It's not paid whatsoever. On this slide that you're looking at, the red value is millions of people that watched a particular campaign. And these are tied to events. These could be tied to breakthroughs in the industry. This is just the level of attention that I was able to gain. You'll see that it's millions of people. And with these types of reports that have data associated with them, data analytics, what you're seeing in the blue value is called calculated ad value. So if you really had to break out the checkbook and pay for advertising, in this particular campaign on the left, the value would have been about $70,000. However, the true value of it, the publicity value, is 3 times that. So for a $70,000 value campaign from your marketing spend, you're really getting 3 times that. You're getting about $211,000 for this particular campaign. So that's the difference with earned media. With public relations being the point of contact for media production on behalf of a company, an event, a nonprofit organization, I received this accolade called 40 Under 40. And I received it because my heart is with the community and with the people on a global scale. Being able to sponsor nonprofit organizations and their events is 100% allowed in the cannabis industry. So if you're thinking about compliant marketing and all of the guidance received today, we're expressing how to grow a cannabis business with and through the media. So the media works for you. And for example, on your screen now, you're seeing what Trinity Global Enterprises created. And we are a research and public relations agency. We created CANNA World Expo as an infotainment marketing and media platform. CWE incorporates news media into all of its functions. We host online symposiums 3 times a year. We host monthly webcasts like the one you're viewing right now. We host a magazine. We produce a magazine that's launching in July. We've got newsletters. We've got social media. And if you've attended our symposium in April, and we have another coming up in August, you'll notice that there are 0 products showcased during our editorial content interviews. So between those interviews, there is time and space for sponsors' brands and sponsors' products to be highlighted. And this is to maintain editorial legal compliance for the worldwide industry. We are extremely aware of the content that we put out on behalf of the companies that we associate with, because we want to maintain compliance with the industry and grow this industry and be the force that really appeals worldwide. So in order to do that, we have to raise the bar on compliance, and we have to adhere to it. So we are able then to take cannabis restoration from the initiative to a true global industry. That's our purpose, that's our mission. So in contrast to in-person expos that are based on geography, CANNA World Expo is designed as a free, fun, online infotainment marketing platform. It's for strategic growth of the cannabis industry. And we are proud to say that we connect businesses and individuals that are seeking direct resources. We have so many contacts, having been in the industry for the last 7 years. We've got so many contacts around the world. So that's one of the benefits of aligning with CWE company to company. And CWE does generate news over the business wire. What you're seeing right now are some headlines that were wire press releases. Thanks. And if you can go to the next slide, thank you. So what I'd like to explain on this is a living example of how CWE is able to dominate search engine optimization, SEO, under the words CANNA World Expo. We've only been through 1/3 of our annual symposiums, 1/3. And if you do a Google search on CANNA World Expo, you will see that there are some other in-person events that are in there. However, they've been around for 6-7 years. We just did one expo. So when you see how to leverage the content and how to leverage the news media, companies are able to take advantage of this. And online, isn't that where everybody is going to shop now and look for companies? So knowing how to navigate the media is a strategic marketing play in the cannabis industry. So to sum it all up, corporate communications is an internal role. However, it's limited by legal compliance. Public relations, PR, is a driving force for sharing the truth. And this is best done by a third-party agency. And earned media is it's just way more cost-effective than paid advertising. Although paid advertising, it does have its place. So earned media truly is the glue that binds corporate communications and public relations. Earned media does take hours to produce results for cannabis companies, yet the collective benefits are priceless. It leads to law changes. It leads to increased accessibility. It leads to research data that proves the plant does what it does. So with all of that said, we caution cannabis companies to leave the heavy lifting to the pros that have a proven track record in the cannabis industry. We're here to protect the industry and to protect your company and to protect your brand. So first impressions do last a lifetime. And with that said, I would like to open the floor to Q&A and thank all of our presenters on the CWE Media Compliance monthly webcast. I'd like to thank Ashley Couch, who is the most amazing attorney, and Snowden Bishop, who is such a rock star in the industry and host of the Cannabis Reporter radio show. Missing from our panel right now is Mr. Frank Lane, who is president of CFN Media, and my business partner and my soul sister, Jessica Chandler. Thank you so, so much, everybody. And if there are any questions, please ask away.
I'd actually like to ask a question of Ashley. I struggle with this sometimes when someone starts talking about their product. If I have someone on either an editorial or a pro series interview and they start going into too many details, where would you advise a client to draw the line? If they're talking about their company, obviously they want to say, oh, I've got a product called Relax. And that's basically making a medical claim or making a wellness claim, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great question. And I wish that I had a perfect answer wrapped in a box that would really help clarify. And unfortunately, I don't. I mean, in preparing for some of the discussions that I've had on this recently, I've even been shocked at some of the things that they've determined have not passed muster that I would have thought, well, just saying this works on new tattoos. I would have thought that would probably be a level low enough that it might have gotten through. However, it's go with your gut is probably the best thing that I can say.
Yeah.
And if it's making you uncomfortable, then that's probably your answer. I think that the best way that I handle that too, which is definitely not a foolproof way, especially, similarly to you, I'm often working with maybe not interviewees, but with clients where I can't really force them to do what I'm suggesting they do. So it's kind of give the advice and then pray. And, I think that this is another realm where the more that you can educate in advance of being on the spot, that helps. And really that serves a great purpose, not just when they're on the spot with the opportunity to speak on your show, but moving forward, they can better conduct themselves when they're not with such high level professionals that may not help them know when to zip it,
Yeah. And then there's another subtle nuance that I often think about, and that is with the testimonials. I mean, if someone is making a comment at the bottom of a page that belongs to a company, it's not being put up by the company, and they say their thank yous on the comment section. Is the FDA going to have a problem with that?
So I think that I have seen letters where they have gone all the way through into things like social media comments. So you're not safe just doing that. But I think it's a lower level. I really do think that the number one concern needs to be the formally distributed, any kind of marketing materials. Those absolutely have to be as perfect as possible because there's really no leeway there. When it's third-party content that's been added, I think you don't ever want to turn off your customers, but at the same time, you do have to be very, very careful. And the problem with things that happen online is even if you delete it, there could be a trace of that forever. So you just have to be very, very cautious. But I would say if there's any ever question, try to think of things as though you're going to end up having to describe it to a judge. That's really how I look at these questions is could I stand in a courtroom with a straight face and explain why my decision was reasonable? And if you don't think you can do that, and even then, even if you describe why it's reasonable and you have lawyers back you up, that is not a fully safe way either when the laws are such a mess. But I think that all of those best efforts really do help and at least show that you're trying. I mean, and hopefully if you do come under review, particularly with the FDA, as long as you continue taking steps to fix whatever that problem is and to respond, that will also mitigate. A lot of these actions are not that they don't penalize so much on the first step. They more just call you out. So I think that avoiding that, but also jumping if you do get in the hot seat, to show that you're doing your best to comply moving forward. But we're all going to have questions. I mean, as an attorney, I definitely lose sleep about this on a daily basis because I can't properly advise my clients from a legal perspective how to always comply. But with media and First Amendment, there are so many ways to get creative about how you're talking about things. I mean, artists and writers and people in the media have been expressing ideas in non-traditional ways to navigate around institutions and religions and all sorts of different systems that have oppressed people in, not just related to plant medicine. So I'm truly confident that we can find ways to creatively navigate until we get things in better shape. But it does take people that are trailblazers and willing to accept some risk. I mean, any of us that are in this industry, we know we're cutting our teeth here and we're really forging the path for others, and the decisions that we make will impact those that come beyond. So
yeah, so very true. Well, we usually put out guidelines. We started out not doing any sponsored content whatsoever because I was raised in journalism school with the professor that was New York Times through and through, and she had these standards, and we started out not having sponsored content, and now we do, because we're a media outlet, and media outlets hurt if they don't have sponsored content. So we've got really rigid guidelines for any written sponsored content, or even the Pro Series, what they can say. But there's still always that subtle line, that could just get them in hot water. And it's not going to affect the media outlets, though.
Right.
Really.
Right.
The FDA is not going to come after us and say, you're not allowed to say that, because our First Amendment right is protected as a journalism outlet.
Absolutely.
As long as we're not, inciting violence or telling people to go break the law.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is companies that are most at risk in this scenario. And, I think that it's a tough landscape to be in. And, in full disclosure, some of the more kind of corporate America groups that I've worked with, one of the ways that they've navigated that, aside from giving pretty much scripted content to read from, which of course you wouldn't want to do in an interview setting that's a little less structured, but also just making it clear that if anything happens, they're liable. Believe it or not, that scary legalese often does help people to stay on track and mind the rules a little bit better. So, I think when people understand the consequences of a misstep, then they're going to be more cautious in the way that they're describing their products or offerings.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Completely makes sense. So, Denise, are you here?
Denise is here, but I actually have a question as well right now.
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me get somebody. Somebody's got a lot of feedback happening on their end. I don't know who it is. So, Snowden, I might mute you for a moment here as well.
Yeah.
Ashley, so can you, for state laws, is there a repository? I'll even actually turn on my video. How's that for a novel idea? Is there a repository of what's approved, like CBD food and beverages? Is there anything like through the FDA or I don't know if it's NIH or CDC or wherever you're doing it, but is there approved CBD food and beverages?
So on a national level, no, not that I'm aware of. And the FDA specifically says that you cannot add those products to food and beverages. On a state level, some states it is legal. The best place I can say, it's funny with a lot of the federal governments and even these state regulatory bodies, a lot of times it's easier to figure out what you can't do than figure out what you can do, because you go back and just see how other people got in trouble, particularly with the FDA. The way I know a lot of what I know is I've gone through and read the letters that have been sent to groups that have supposedly violated. So sometimes it's easier going back and looking at missteps to determine what not to do. Also, a lot of the compilation resources, I guess is a good way to put it, that have the rules kind of in a way where you can get a higher level view, they're often incorrect. I've seen some with Leafly that are better, but one thing to keep in mind, the laws are changing so incredibly quickly. You're relying on people that are often not lawyers and potentially not experts who are compiling them, assuming they got them in real time. And even beyond that, what's really wonky is that even with the state laws that are a little bit sometimes more clear, sometimes they're not even in the law. So you can go and read the law and it still doesn't even have the information because it happened in a side order that the governor put out, or it happened in an assembly meeting and it's HR bill. Sometimes it's not codified in a way that's even accessible to go straight to the law to find it. Sometimes you have to do a whole investigative search to even get to the info. So, I would say check, double check, check again. But as of right now, specifically related to food and beverage, there is no national okay on that. There is no okay for dietary supplements for CBD. Anything really that you ingest right now on a federal level is not really allowed. States, however, like I mentioned, some states are treating it more like cannabis regulation, where they're creating their own rules around it and it kind of ignoring the federal bans on all of that. So hopefully that will change. There is one FDA approved medical treatment that's cannabis related, and oddly enough, a couple that are synthetic cannabis. So we're not even using the real plant, we're creating chemicals that are mimicking the plants. So, the more we can really work on education and science to back up why this is not a big deal to allow it in foods and beverages. And another big issue that I guess I should mention, products that are being tested are often not actually showing what they're labeled as having in them with CBD. So I think that that's another area, particularly when you're doing anything that's going to be ingested, making sure that whatever you're claiming you have, really you have it, also will help, because it shows that we're all credible and really creating products where it's clear what the ingredients or what the levels are, so people understand how they can use the dosages and properly medicate themselves.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. Denise, do you want to hop on in here for a moment with anything? Any questions? Any other ones?
I am on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? Snowden was asking earlier if I was on, and we were getting some feedback, so I just shut down my entire feed to see if that would help. So I'm back. Did you have a question, Snowden?
Actually, yes, I did. I've got two of them. One is for you, Denise. I wanted to ask if you've had any response at all from Facebook as to why they shut down the video, because it didn't make any sense to me. And YouTube as well. It's just the most bizarre. It makes no sense.
Yeah. You want to know what they said?
Yes.
They said it was policy.
Policy? Their policy or governmental policy?
Their policy.
So
what we're going to do now?
Like, well, I just don't like you. Is that legal?
Ashley?
I guess that would be a question for Ashley.
I think a lot of disenforcement, you can make the argument it's not legal. The key is until people sue and prove that, until it hits the courts, a lot of times we don't have any kind of debate argument. So I think that, yes, the more people challenge these online regulations, because like I said before, usually should be protected in a public context, like a town hall. However, now our town hall is online, so groups that are controlling the distribution of certain commentary are now, it would be like preventing a group from speaking on a town square, is the argument. And that's not allowed in a lot of contexts. You can't just limit people's ability to say things. So the real question is online the town hall? And really there's legislation happening. I do think it will push more and more that way. I do think that there's more oversight as to the power of social media companies. Clearly they've been under review as well for everything from politics to other types of policies in terms of what they're allowing through and what they're not. But it really takes powerful groups with a lot of money to litigate this a lot of times. So it's really, to some extent, we wait until others push forth cases, such as the one I mentioned that's being supported by Normal, that's against Facebook for this exact thing. Cancer survivor, CBD user, and it was an educational seminar. I mean, this wasn't a straight product promotion or infomercial or anything even illegal. So, why are they able to restrict things that aren't even, arguably aren't violating any laws? So I think we need to look at that. And also the power of the consumer. If people didn't put up with this from Facebook, then we would have a lot more clout. So, I think that's part of it too, is the users have an obligation to help have a voice in properly establishing what we will and will not accept.
Well, there's a massive, with everything that's been going on, there's a massive amount of censorship that is occurring as well, especially around natural alternatives and things like that. So, from Facebook to YouTube to Instagram, there's a huge amount of censorship of First Amendment rights.
Essential oils is another huge area where this is a problem. I know a number of people that work in companies that, for example, use multi-level marketing, and to some extent they're able to get around that by going person to person with their marketing, but same issues when they're on social media. Anything, lavender helps me relax, or, XYZ claims that you can make about other types of plants. It's the same problem that we're having here, except cannabis and CBD just have so much, they're more on the radar, especially the ties to the Controlled Substances Act that still has not been fixed since the 70s or 1970. That's really the shadow over this whole thing. So, once we can establish ourselves as credible and establish this is the medicine that it is, I think that we're going to have a lot more opportunity to converse about it in public online forums.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, when you have a basically, big pharma that's looking at, you get your patents out there, and they're looking to basically make money on something that's readily available, that has been used for, thousands of years, hundreds of years. I mean, look, our country was founded on this as well. And, just bringing this incredible plant back with all of its medicinal properties, as well as not just that, but the textiles, the building materials, I mean, everything that you can utilize this for, it's you kind of start going back to follow the money.
I was going to say the FDA has, or the pharmaceutical companies have the FDA in their pocket, basically, I think.
Absolutely.
But it's just so strange. The social media policies around this just baffle me, because it's editorial, it's entertainment or journalism. And I know we've been shadow banned a few times. We've got 119,000 followers on our Facebook page, and we get shadow banned. I mean, I can put posts out that'll get 1 or 2 likes, whereas when I know that we're not being shadow banned, we'll get, a few hundred on just a boring piece of whatever. So, yeah, it's making the users guilty before proven innocent.
Absolutely. They will just automatically take it down. And that's really the same across the board for even things like copyright violations. I work a lot in entertainment, so that's an issue where I'll have a client that may get accused of something being too similar to someone else's. They don't investigate, they just take it down immediately. And that's the same thing we're seeing here. From a legal perspective, it really should be just sponsored paid ads that are blocked, not anything that could be made an argument that it's First Amendment editorial. That's not what's happening, though. They're just going in and blocking everything. And, anyone who's tried to interact with customer service of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Google, you're lucky even with the business.
They're opaque on purpose.
Yeah, if you get any support, it's pretty scant. So, I don't have a lot of hope that you'll get internal support if you have an issue like that. So it's just trying to get creative about where you can put stuff and how to phrase it where it won't flag the bots or the reviewers. And like I said, the online surveillance is increasing dramatically because of COVID. They're now able to look, even, the laws have been strengthened that it's under the guise of protecting children from predators online, but really there's an increased surveillance that's now happening. And I think more and more and more of that is going to happen. And to Snowden's point, when you've got drug cartels in the form of legal pharmaceutical companies and lobbyists that are supporting the status quo, it makes it very difficult for disruptors in cannabis to be able to move forward without taking tremendous professional and personal risks.
Well, we certainly take on that challenge at CANNA World Expo. And we are laying it down as far as the media goes in every single angle possible. So when you think they've blocked us on a certain level, we're going for 2 more on another. So we're hitting it hard. And as far as being an industry disruptor, that's what we're all about. That's why we started this back in 2013, was to educate the general public about what this one component amongst hundreds of components in this plant can do. And unless you're able to convey that properly through the media and get the mainstream media's attention on a world level, this industry will not be able to move forward. So I thank you both so, so much. And for Jessica and for Frank, who had to drop off, for being with us today and sharing so much of your time. It's been very valuable. And if anybody would like to reach either of our presenters that are still with us right now, or Frank, or see this video again, we will be putting it out through CannaWorldExpo.com, and we will try our best to share it on our social media pages and work with the alternative of the current social media, so we make sure that the truth gets out to the people, because the people deserve to know the truth about this incredible plant that's been around forever.
Yeah.
When you look at those
one more thing too. One of the most important things about doing these events and the Canna World Expo and getting the news out to mainstream audiences that are not in the echo chambers is just to try to build the excitement for people to want to call their representatives and say, hey, look, this is a plant that does no harm. This is going to make you healthy. This is going to save the earth from this. Whatever the case may be, they need to start reaching out to and getting involved with their representatives, because that's what they're there for. And if they want to see cannabis policy change, they need to really reach out. And I think by educating people like we're trying to do here, hopefully that will make them excited to get involved on that level and really help to push this along so that we don't have these restrictions.
I think I got every other word of what you were saying.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Well, I'll just leave it there and say thank you. Call your congresspeople. And thank you for doing this, Denise, and thank you, Jessica, for getting the board, and thank you, Ashley, for all of your insights. And this is great. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
and
much.
And Jessica's got a little bit of information to share on what's coming up next.
I do. Oh, fantastic. Woohoo! Well, let me give you some information then. So basically, I'd like to conclude with, hey, look what we've got up here next. We have our next Canna World Expo Symposium coming up in August the 8th and the 15th. However, what's really exciting about what's coming up is some of our guests as well. Just as exciting as the first go around, it's going to be just as exciting this time. We have Dale Comstock, the American badass. Yep. So you can figure he's a naturopathic doctor as well as, Delta Force. I mean, he's a pretty incredible guy. So he's going to be joining us. We have like to welcome back Marvin Washington, Super Bowl champion, also big advocate doing amazing things back in New York. And then we're going to have, again, we're going to welcome back Leslie Boxer. He is the chairman of Electrum Partners, and I believe he's going to be giving us a state of the industry address and some incredible information. We're going to have the veterinarians from Poppy Willow, and they have a specially formulated USDA certified organic hemp CBD that I've heard is for pets. So I'm kind of sort of keeping that a little separate, but yeah. We're going to be also touching on legal and social justice. So I have a few ladies I know. I got a couple of gals that will be joining us as well for that. And we're going to also, perhaps Ashley Couch. And I know we have the incredible Snowden who's going to be with us. So we are going to also have a technology panel that's going to help the industry avoid censorship. So let me conclude with, again, all the details are going to be at cannaworldexpo.com. You can check it all out. You can register there. And the utmost gratitude and thanks for our incredible panel that we've had with us today. It's wonderful how we're ending with just the ladies, because we're going to be rocking it and getting it done. And we'd like to sign out with a big, huge, wonderful thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing this. Stay tuned for, we got a special June event that's going to be coming up. We'll be putting an announcement out there. And if you have any questions, reach out for us. You can go to the website, cannaworldexpo.com, or you can send us an email direct at info at cannaworldexpo.com, trying to make it as easy as possible. You can reach out to us on Facebook. You can reach out to us through Instagram. And do we have LinkedIn, Denise? Yes, no? We have a LinkedIn as well. So we are out there for everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our panelists. This has just been incredible. Thank you so very much and have a fantastic week. We look forward to everything we're creating together, and we will be seeing you soon.